Would you like to know what the benefits of understanding the concept of God are? Then listen to this entire video where I explain how grasping the concept of God helps you understand how interconnected reality is and how, depending on your behavior, you create monumental consequences in the world. So before we get into this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, Jungian psychology, and how to reduce suffering in life. Let's get into it. So I've already made a few videos on the concept of God before. Yesterday I shot a video on how understanding God as a concept brings value to my life. I'll put it in the description if you want to check it out. So I discussed how it led me to realize that there is meaning to be found in life, and the concept helps me orient myself towards those daily activities that will lead me towards finding meaning. Now, this is quite an abstract concept of finding meaning and how God affects that, so I'll break it down into this video to really focus on one benefit, because I thought I'd be able to make a video discussing multiple benefits that I've been experiencing, and that's what I intended to do with this video. But as I was writing the ideas, I realized this video is going to take way too long and I'll only be able to discuss one concept. So I'll be making more videos in the next few days on more benefits, more practical benefits of how understanding God helps your life, or helps me at least. Okay. So the first benefit of understanding the concept of God, I would say, is it helps me begin to see how interconnected reality is and how small things produce large consequences. The benefits from that mindset is that my focus in life is drawn more towards the present moment and less dwelling on the past or being anxious about the future. Because when you understand that the smallest actions of yours can have tremendous outcomes on yourself and other people, you pay more attention to what you are actually doing in the moment. And it's not like you become paranoid about making a mistake or behaving badly. It's more you're neutrally acknowledging what is going on in the now, and also appreciating the peace that is currently present around you. Like, you look around and actually think, that's kind of cool, that's kind of nice, you know? Like, I've realized in the last, recently, I would, if I'm walking outside, I would just look up at the sun, or how the clouds surround the sun. Like, I saw some pretty cool structures of the clouds and how the sun was shining through. And I just thought, damn, that's pretty awesome. Like, it looks kind of sick, you know? It's kind of nice. And you catch yourself and you look up wow, that's I never really noticed that before. And you take a moment to focus on what is occurring in the present moment, not thinking about something else or stressing about something else. You think you're just here. Your focus and your consciousness is in the right now. Or also, you focus more on small things just happening around you that you used to overlook. Like, I was walking down the street today, and there were a few times where I just saw people, maybe some street artists, and I just had to smile because I thought it was kind of funny, and nobody else around me on the street was smiling, and I was trying to restrain myself from smiling because people would think it would be weird. But I was just sort of more in the moment and just actually looking at what is around me and paying attention to it. So you essentially stop to take a moment and acknowledge your surrounding and appreciate it. Now, there are many self-help gurus who promote living in the present, like the famous book The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle essentially argues that you find happiness and peace within you by living more in the present moment and worrying less about the future or the past. And I can definitely underline that argument. Now, and of course, it's easier said than done to live in the moment, but I do find that understanding the concept of God certainly helps with that. Now, you're probably thinking, mate, what do you mean that God helps you understand how interconnected reality is and focus on the moment? Okay, I'm going to explain it now. Here is why. By the way, when I talk about, yeah, God helps me do this, or understanding God, I'm talking about the concept, not like some old man sitting on a cloud who's judging people or throwing things down at people. No. I'm talking about the concept. So here is why. So I would still say, a quick disclaimer, before, I'm still in the early phase of grasping the concept of God. And you need to understand that this is really important. The concept of God has been around for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years, an extremely long time. And people still can't fully explain the concept. So you need to bear with me that the concept of God is severely complex and tricky to convey, but I'll give it a shot. So I'll only explain how the concept of God enables me to understand how interconnected reality is. So, people tend to think of God as something transcendental. It is divine. It lies above everything else. It has a presence everywhere. It encompasses everything. So think of it a bit like atoms. Atoms are everywhere, and the same as with God. It's everywhere. It's kind of like a law that governs reality and the universe. And I've made other videos on this concept of how God is like something that underlines reality. I'll put them in the description also for you to understand it. But that discussion is beyond the concept of beyond the scope of this video. So here's a nice quote to explain how God is something transcendental and everywhere. It's a quote by Voltaire, the French. Was a French Enlightenment writer and philosopher. The quote goes, "God is a circle whose center is everywhere and circumference nowhere." Let me repeat that. God is a circle whose center is everywhere and circumference is nowhere. So essentially, God is present, the center of it is essentially present everywhere, and there is no border to it. So it is everywhere. Because the center is everywhere, and the circumference of a circle is like this, it's the edge of it. Voltaire says the circumference of God is nowhere, hence there is no boundary to it. It is omnipresent. Now, when you grasp that God is everywhere, then the set of criteria with which you perceive the world, like the assumptions you have about life, like the lens through which you observe the world, these things change. You begin to think in the following way. Well, if there is such a thing as a set of laws or principles which govern the world, like this network underground, which is managing and controlling the tendencies by which humans behave and exist, then you start to think, the world has a specific, particular structure to it. So what I mean is, if it's everywhere, that means there must be some sort of network that is spread out across the entire world. It is like underneath the world. Think of it like a network, almost like a net under the world. That's like the world is on top of it. It's like the net is going through the entire world, and it has these nodes with every person, and the network underneath is controlling people. It determines how you behave, how you react to things, what is going on. That is kind of what God kind of might be like. And when you understand that, you grasp, and this is quite important, you grasp that there is some sort of a structure that is existing, that is omnipresent, that exists across the whole world, that is underlying the structure of reality. So it's like a structure that determines the way people tend to behave and what happens to you or other people around you if you act in certain ways. It's like a set of rules or guidelines and explanations of what happens. So you realize that there is a kind of interconnectedness in reality because there is an underlying structure, God, which governs everything. Everything is one. So if we link it back to Voltaire's quote, that God is a circle whose center is everywhere and circumference nowhere. God is centered, like the essence of God is present everywhere, the center of it, and it has no border. So it is present at all times, everywhere. So if we can sort of use that idea, we can sort of say, well, then everything is one. Everything is, God, that sounds really, weird if I say it, but everything is God, kind of. Sort of, it is everywhere, God is everywhere, and then we could say, okay, well, if God is everywhere, then everything is God. Do you get what I mean? Something like that. Okay, so, but that means then, if everything is one, everything is interconnected. Because, obviously, you're different to me, the house I'm in is different to me, it's a thing, it's not a being. But, so these are all like clearly different things, and we have different, like my consciousness is separated from yours, so we're obviously separate entities, but there is this thing that is connecting us, because if everything is one, then we're different, but then again we are the same, we are one, we are connected. So everything is connected because everything is governed by the same thing. There is no separate area that is subjected to a different principle other than God. Like it is all the same. Thus, if you behave in one way here, then the effects will be felt over there because they are one. They are the same thing. They are connected. And that applies to every behavior, every geographic area, and every culture on this world. When you comprehend this concept, then you start to look at life, at the world, and at other people with more respect, because you grasp that there is this colossal structure in this world which governs everything. You kind of take a step back and think, whoa, that's kind of crazy. And it's especially a revelation to us, or something, an intense realization, because we are raised frequently with the idea that there is nothing too special about life. And people don't formulate it like that, like there is nothing special, but they say, yeah, there is something special, like having fun at parties, buying cool things like clothes and cars, and going on vacation. And like, yeah, those things are somewhat fun, but deep down, unconsciously, you know that these things are not meaningful and do not give you a purpose in your life. Hence, they are like, it's kind of like somebody is selling you a car. It looks awesome, they're telling you it's awesome, but you already know it's not awesome, but you're still gonna buy it. That's kind of what it is. Like, people are telling you these things are great and you should strive for them, these materialistic things, and you go ahead, you proceed to go and like strive and buy for them, but you know already that they're not going to make you happy and fulfilled and find meaning in life. That's kind of what it's like. So when you suddenly get the idea that there is some universal principle in life that governs everything, you suddenly get a glimpse of that there is something beyond you in life. There is something transcending everything. There is a set of principles that can enable you to achieve something fundamentally meaningful. And this monumental structure is so divine that it can offer you the most valuable thing in life. So what you have is now this, you understand that there is this thing that exists that is beyond you. And that's quite a good, I think a beneficial, psychologically a useful thing to understand, because it is humbling in that you are subjected to this thing that is more powerful than you, and of which there exists more of. Like this thing, there exists more of this thing, far more than there exists of you. And when you understand that, you say, okay, like I'm insignificant, and that's not a bad thing. That doesn't make you think like, oh, I'm useless or I'm irrelevant. No. You understand that you are subjected to this thing. You are part of it. It is beyond you. It's a lot stronger than you, but it is configured in your favor. If you listen to it, acknowledge it, and follow it, the principles, then you can benefit tremendously. And like when I talk about these things and think about these things, they really get me quite excited actually when I realize the interconnectedness of reality, because it's like it kind of like the thing that keeps coming to my mind is how a child gets excited by a hero movie, or like superheroes, because it's kind of like there's somebody who they want to be, they can strive to be, who can save people, who is very powerful, and kind of promises them some sort of value through acknowledgement by people, or being saving people, and this sort of like power. And that same essence is incorporated in the concept of God, or this reality, this interconnected reality. Now, one more thing I want to say is that I find it quite a shame that people, when you're a kid, people tend to command you and encourage you to follow certain rules and principles. Like, they might tell you to follow God, or they might tell you to learn certain things in school. But they don't argue the intuition behind the utility of understanding and following these rules and principles. They don't explain why it's useful to do these things. Like, I remember in English class in my high school, I had to learn this point, evidence, explain structure of an essay. In English literature classes, it was always about writing essays. You have to argue things. You have an introduction and then a few paragraphs and a conclusion. And in the paragraphs, you try to put this point forward. You try to argue something, and you have a point. Then you give the evidence to it to substantiate the claim, and then you explain it. Point, evidence, explain. I used to really dislike that concept because it was super annoying, and I wasn't really good at it. And what I didn't realize, or nobody ever told me, I had to stumble on it by accident by watching a Jordan Peterson video, is that if you learn the PEE, the point, evidence, explain something, you learn how to argue. You learn how to formulate a convincing argument, and if you can do that, you change the world, because you can convince people of new ideas, you can convince people of your value, they will give you money. They won't only give you money, but they will want to give you money because they believe in you, and the world lies at your feet because you can change it. No one ever told me these things, and it's the same with God, I think. Of course, there's a huge stigma around it, and I understand why, and in some ways there's a justifiable stigma around it, but no one ever told me, nobody explained God in a logical way to me, essentially. Nobody explained it how beneficial, logically and intuitively how it can be beneficial to you. No one ever did that. And that's a real, real shame. Anyway, in conclusion, the first benefit I would say that I experienced from understanding the concept of God is how I understand that there is this underlying structure that governs reality, and that we are all subjected to, and that sets up these principles, and if you follow them, you can find something like meaning in life, or the most valuable thing. And once you understand that, you understand how interconnected reality is, and how everything is subjected to and governed by the same thing, and it is all interconnected. And if everything is interconnected, you see how if you behave towards one person here, a consequence might arise all the way over here by this person, because life is so interconnected. People, it's like life is like an ocean with ripples. If you move one muscle, there will be ripples felt on the other side of the world, kind of like that. And you understand how that's in some sense frightening, but also amazing. It's awesome because literally in awe. You feel like you stand there in awe when you understand this, because it is something beyond you, and just something you need to take into account when you behave, really, and not in an anxiety-provoking way, but in a way that you sit back and you focus on the moment more and acknowledge the moment, because that is where the interconnectedness manifests itself. That's what it is. The interconnectedness manifests itself in the moment, because that is where the cause and effect relationships are happening, or some of them at least, or a lot of them. It's like, if something comes to you now, you can feel a consequence of it now. And that's why it draws your attention into the now and focuses on the now. And yeah, and as I said, if you live more in the present, then you worry less about the future or the past. You're less anxious, and you just enjoy the moment. You appreciate it. You're grateful for it. And like, if we talk about happiness, just the feeling of positive emotion, that is how you feel happiness, is being grateful for the present moment. And seriously, like, try out gratitude. That will it'll I mean, it never really fails to make me smile and make me feel pleasant inside. So please leave a comment below whether you understand what I mean with this interconnectedness and how God helps you understand that, or whether you've experienced it yourself yet, or whether this concept is still too abstract, and whether I should like try and elaborate more on it for you to understand it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, Jungian psychology, and how to reduce suffering in life. Thank you for listening.